Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday to you. Coming at you with this week's stock market overview and a few stocks to watch for next week for trading and investing. Let's just go ahead and hop right into it. So, big week ahead. It was a very impressive week last week for a lot of the sectors that have been actually beaten up. I We'll get to that in a second. But taking a look at the economic calendar for the upcoming week, we've got a pretty big week ahead, and then we've got some geopolitical stuff that's happening with Saudi having an attack from some drones on oil. Pretty interesting development over the weekend here. Have a couple of trade ideas for that as well. But last week was, kind of talked about the energy space, even though it's been a very tough trade to try and find a bottom in. Last week's video talked about maybe the opportunity to jump into some energy names, and it was a pretty good week for those names last week, and that may continue heading into this week. So we'll see how that plays out. But we've got an announcement from the Fed on Wednesday. And then we have the Jerome Powell press conference. If he disappoints after the big run that we've had in the markets, we could see a pretty swift pullback. If he says something that the market doesn't like, I would not be totally shocked if that were to happen, if we were to get a bit of a pullback. So keep that in mind. We've got industrial production, we've got the home builders index, building permits, housing starts. We've got weekly jobless claims, existing home sales, and leading economic indicators. So we've got some economic data, but the big thing next week will be the Fed, right? So we'll see how that impacts the markets. But let's take a look real quick at the sectors. So last week talked about dust, and J Dust is if more steam comes out of the gold and gold miners, you could see a trading opportunity in dust, and did have a little bit of positive action last week. We'll see if we get any follow through. Watch gold. If gold weakens, miners weaken, this one could be a trading opportunity. But IBB actually trying to reclaim the 50-day moving average. Now, I'm still not super crazy about the IBB, but it does look like we're kind of coiling up, and we're going to break one way or the other. Love to see this get back above the 200-day, and there's still some individual biotech names. The charts actually look pretty darn good in. I think you want to keep an eye on the biotech space, and there are ways to play that triple levered ETFs. If we break to the upside, LABU, and then there's LABD if we break to the downside. But actually, IBB I think is looking fairly constructive. We want to see 100 hold as support. IWM, very nice action in IWM last week. Now, I will say that there are a lot of stocks that had very big moves in a very short period of time, and could be a bit extended. I wouldn't be shocked if we were to take a breather, maybe consolidate a bit, or even pull back. So we need to be somewhat cautious of the fact that we've had such a big move in such a very short period of time. 160 is the area to watch for IWM. I'd love to see us consolidate here, build up some energy before we take out 160, but that would be a very positive development. And we'll talk about T2108, T2107. Those are getting a little stretched to the upside. Now, they can stay stretched. It doesn't mean that we're looking at an immediate pullback, but they are getting up there. We'll look at that in a second. IYT, transportation, nice breakout over an area of potential price resistance, but coming right up into a potential double top. So we've got FedEx reporting this week. That could impact the transportation space. This oil, if oil really spikes, that could impact transportation. So not to the positive side. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But we are coming up into an area of potential resistance. But nice action in the IYT. JDST talked about that bearish ETF for the miners, junior miners. QQQ, so we've got, I think, testimony going on with Microsoft, or is it Microsoft or Twitter and Google and Facebook next week. So I don't know how some of the big tech names will be acting, but consolidating above the 50-day moving average, getting near an area of potential price resistance. Maybe we consolidate here, but big tech, I think you want to be somewhat cautious after the move that we've had here. SMH semiconductors at an area also of a potential, double top resistance area here. So we'll have to see what happens, but I like the strength in the semiconductors. We'll see if we can consolidate, or maybe we pull back, we fill this gap and then test the 50-day as potential support. I wouldn't be shocked if that were to happen. But still looking pretty darn good on SMH. S&P 500, coming back up to these all-time highs, testing it. Are we going to be able to break through with any kind of authority, or do we need to consolidate and build up some energy before we attempt to do so? We've had it, like I said, a pretty big move, pretty short period of time. We'll see how it plays out. But you can't deny this has been a very impressive rally, and I think a very hated rally, because I think a lot of people were positioning for a recession and positioning for a big pullback, and how quickly things can change. So TVIX, UVXY, volatility, as you can imagine, as the markets move to new highs, we're pulling back on volatility. Now, if we roll over next week because the Fed says something really stupid or does something really dumb, then we could see a nice little spike in volatility. So you've got to keep that on your radar. Don't chase it, and keep in mind that the markets often tend to make an initial move from a Fed announcement that is not the actual move. So just be careful. Don't be chasing anything. Don't chase any gaps. Aerospace defense, arguably, I've been saying it for weeks now, actually for quite a while, that is the strongest sector out there and continues to grind higher. It is at an area of potential resistance, but after this thing that's gone on this weekend, I don't know, maybe aerospace defense continues to be a strong play. And there is a particular name that I think could get a very nice bounce after this news from this weekend in Saudi Arabia. I think there is one name that could actually do very well off of this news, but we'll see. I'll be sending that out to the pro members tomorrow morning. XHB home builders, actually looking pretty darn good, right? Just made looks like a new all-time high. Probably could stand to consolidate here, but home builders looking pretty good. And if the Fed cuts the rate again, I guess that would be pretty good for the home builders. We'll have to see how that plays out. XLB building materials, nice move this week, coming up into an area of potential resistance. If we get some kind of a trade deal actually going with China, there's speculation might do a smaller deal. I don't know. But in an interesting spot on building materials, I would not be surprised if maybe we consolidate here a bit. XLE Energy, very nice move last week, right? And now, but we are bumping up against this short-term trend line. If we can take this trend line out with some conviction, it could be some follow-through in the energy space. So keep an eye on that. XLF coming up into an area of potential resistance ahead of the Fed. Let's see how this reacts after the Fed announcement, but wouldn't be surprised if we were to pull back, because we are coming up into an area of potential resistance. XLI Industrials, impressive move, trying to break above an area of resistance. Managed to close above that on Friday. could be a little bit extended, but it'd be interesting to see if this area can hold now as support. Maybe we consolidate here, but I'd really like to see it hold the support and not break back down below, and retest the 50 or come down to the 200 day. I'd like to see this consolidate right on top of this area of resistance. Make that support, right? XLP, consumer staples, flagging. Um, still looks like a very strong sector that is. I will say there are a lot of valuations that are very stretched in that space, but it still looks pretty darn bullish, right? We're still in an uptrend above rising 50-day moving average. So consumer staples look pretty strong. XLV Healthcare got back above the 50-day, trying to hold on to that. Broke over this little trend line here. The healthcare space actually looks fairly decent. Consumer discretionary at an area of potential resistance, right? Maybe a double top there. We'll have to see how it plays out. Maybe we just consolidate here for a little bit before trying to take out that high. XOP, very impressive move. Trying to hold on to the 50-day moving average. And this could be this could be a space that gets some continued strength off that Saudi Arabia news. Although I am seeing now that, what was anticipated, it could be a while with production that it's not really going to be impacted that long. So I don't know. We'll have to see how this plays out. XRT, retail, have had some really impressive retail numbers from a lot of different players. This has actually had a huge move. Wouldn't be surprised to see this consolidate a bit, take a little bit of a breather, maybe pull back. But retail actually looking pretty darn impressive as well. So overall, a lot of bullish activity out there. But we've had a tremendous move in a short period of time. So let's maybe, cool our heels a little bit. Don't be chasing anything. I mean, when you look at a chart of something, if it's up, 5-6 days in a row, almost straight up, nothing goes straight up forever, right? You're going to see some consolidation or a healthy pullback, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that could happen. So be aware of that. Okay. All right. So let's take a look real quick at what we've got coming up in terms of, just real quick. This is the list from last week's pro members. I had some really nice movers in there, boy. BHAT, FET, Plug, SCPL, EXTR, all nice moves. Some of these actually are going to carry over into next week, but pretty nice action in some of these names from the list last week. This week we've got some earnings. We've got Rensola. I think FedEx is an important one. Chewy. Let's see. General Mills, right? So Cracker Barrel. I mean, we've got a very small list of stocks that are reporting. But the good news is that this earnings season's almost over, and we're probably a couple of weeks away from the new one starting. That's the awesome part, right? We'll be starting a new one in the near future. But let's take a look real quick at the T2106 and T2106, T2108, T2107. All right, T2106, McClellan oscillator, right? We got up into this area of potential resistance, pulling back a little bit, So we are in an area where it wouldn't be a surprise if we were to pull back or weaken a bit. T2107, T2108. Now remember, these are the ones that you get up to 70 and above. They're getting a little overdone, right, to the upside, and we've had a big move in a short period of time. Now, this isn't near 70, but we're getting up into this area where we found some resistance before 60. And, I wouldn't be shocked if we were to pause, right? If we were to pause or even pull back a bit. T2108, the amount of stocks above the 40-day moving average, and this is, actually it looks like it got right up into the 70, 71 area, and it actually is pulling back. So I would not be shocked if we were to take a pause. We've had a big move in a short period of time. This is the amount of stocks over the 40-day moving average, and if you've got profits, nice time to lock them in. Take some off the table, lock it in, raise some powder, keep some powder dry. It's not a terribly bad idea when we get up into this area. All right, and so let's take a look at my list of stocks to watch for next week. Several of these almost all of them are off of the stocks that are coming up for earnings. This SANW, Farm Products. Look, I think, so these guys report, hold on a second. These guys report Wednesday before the open. And, a lot of the farm product names have been hurt because of the tariffs in China and all that stuff. Let's see what these guys do. It's actually, looks like you've got a pretty decent area to trade against, the 225, 230 area as potential support. Now it is below the 200-day and the 50-day, but the 50 is still above the 200, which I think is kind of a positive deal. Got a little trend line here. If we can take out that trend line and get through these moving averages, I think we get back up into the 310, 311 area, and then if we can take that out, we get a nice flat top breakout, right? So worth keeping an eye on this. Maybe take it ahead of earnings to see if you get a little lift into earnings. Get out before the earnings number, or maybe keep a little lotto piece if you want to hold the lotto through the earnings. But it does appear to me as though this has been trading in a channel for a while, and we're at the bottom of the channel. Maybe we get a nice little some follow through heading into earnings on Wednesday. So it could be a short-term trading opportunity after earnings. If they give a good number and give a good guide, then potentially you take out $3, and I think 340, 350 area could be a target. Next target after that be about 375, 380. But worth keeping an eye on SANW for a trading opportunity. EVSI, this is not an earnings play, but they do have an event next week, and I think this is a very interesting. It's a solar charging station for vehicles. They just uplisted. It trades extremely thin. I like the story here. I like the product. They have an event on the 19th. September 19th, conference call, provide an update on recent developments, corporate milestones. It could be a catalyst for this stock. Like I said, it trades very thin. There is a gap to fill up to about the 200-day. And Rensola could be a catalyst, right? If that has good earnings, maybe the solar space itself gets a little action. We'll see. But Sola reports Monday before the open, and I think Sola actually has a pretty interesting looking setup too. Kind of got a little flag pattern here just below the 50-day moving average. See if we can take that out with some conviction. Take out this trend line. Could be an interesting trading opportunity on Rensola, and like I said, it may be EVSI. If the solar names do get a little lift, maybe that gets a lift too. But I'm more interested. Full disclosure, I do have a small position in EVSI. It's a speculative play. I have a very small position, but I could be looking to add to that position this week, depending on what they have to say in their conference call on corporate update. Okay, FDX, FedEx, at a very interesting spot, right? So we're testing the 200-day. We've had a pretty nice run. We are overbought. I would not be shocked if we were to pull back, even if the number's good, right? Wouldn't be surprised if we pulled back But then, if we pull back to the 165 area, that could be an interesting spot for a potential dip for more of a long-term hold or swing consideration. Thicker stock, but it's been in a downtrend for a while here. If they report a good number, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it pulled back because it's already had a very big move, right? So maybe you look for it to pull back, and you've got a pretty good area to trade against, this 148, 149 area. If it pulls back there, with good numbers and good guidance, then maybe that's an opportunity to dip for a long-term hold in that area, right? Once I'm thinking that the area could be, the entry zone could be somewhere between 150 and 160, somewhere in that area. And then you put your stop, like I said, below 148. But worth keeping an eye on. FedEx. Adobe, this has been a darling for a while. Now it's looking like it's under a bit of pressure. We're below the 50-day moving average. The 50-day is starting to curl down. Software application has been a sector that's been getting beaten up pretty recently. This could give the sector a lift if they report a good number, and then maybe this goes back up to test all-time highs. But then again, if they disappoint and they break below that 200-day, that could be problematic for the sector and for the stock. So worth keeping an eye on just to see how it impacts the overall sector. Chewy. So look, I am a Chewy customer, and I will be a Chewy customer my entire life. I love that company. I do not own the stock. I want to own the stock. Noticing there are a lot of people that are, looking to go short if Chewy breaks below 29. Now, this thing priced at $22 to go public, had a pretty nice run on the opening day. It's been trading in a channel. We're at the bottom of the channel. They report Tuesday after the close, along with Adobe and FedEx. A pretty big day on Tuesday. If this thing gets back down to the $22 area, if they report earnings and they give a good guide or whatever, and this thing pulls back, gets down to 22, I'm going to look to take a long-term hold in Chewy. If they report good numbers and the thing spikes, I don't really want to chase it, but it is in an area of potential support, and it is oversold. So I am very interested in Chewy's earnings to see how it plays out. Like I said, if this thing were to get down to $22, I would absolutely look to start building my position. And then BYSI, Beyond Spring. This is biotech name that reports on Wednesday before the open. I think it's got kind of an interesting looking setup here. Kind of got a cup going on. You got a nice little pennant formation here. It's above the 50-day, or it's above the 200-day. What I don't like is I don't like the fact that this 50-day just crossed below the 200-day. I'm not super crazy about that, but I do like the fact that it has broken over this trend line, this longer term trend line, broke over that trend line, came back, tested the top, bounced off of it. Now we've got this kind of this bullish formation. I think it's worth keeping an eye on for a potential trading opportunity off of earnings. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but at least worth having on the radar. Okay, that is it for the free list of stocks to watch for next week. It's going to be an interesting week. We've had a big move in a lot of names in a very short period of time. Be careful. Don't chase. So a lot of low float garbage stuff making big moves. Some real trash out there. So be careful. You don't want to get caught up in some of these names. One that's coming to mind, and I was going to pull it up, but I can't remember what the symbol is. But the thing was $2. It's down to 50 cents in like 2 days. So you got to be very, very careful, okay? All right, that's it. Pro members, I will have the list of stocks to watch. I've got a pretty good list for you for next week. I'll have that out first thing in the morning. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you all next week.